A 1.5 inch scale Allchin Royal Chester traction engine renovation, part 5. Cleaning up the strakes on the rear wheels on my Boxford lathe in the main workshop, using a special mandrel that I made a while ago. Here are the wheels on the bench in the workshop, and as you can see they are in a bit of a state. The paint on the strakes is very rough indeed, and quite a lot of it is missing. I'm just testing to see how firmly attached to the metal the paint is. And the bad news is it's quite well attached to the metal and it's been there a long time. I would like to show various methods of removing the paint from around the edges of wheels. This is a mandrel I made a while ago, and it takes different collars and O-rings for holding bits of metal. The shaft of the mandrel is a bit too small to fit in the wheel. In this clip I'm facing both ends of a piece of aluminium tube. This tubing is a good push fit in the centre of the wheels, as well as being an easy sliding fit on the mandrel shaft. After turning, I deburred the inside of the tube and used a file to clean up the outside edge. Now all I need to do is remove this tube from the chuck and push it into one of the wheels, slide the wheel onto the mandrel, which is held in the 3-jaw chuck, fit a couple of washers and tighten the nut to make sure that the wheel is securely held in the mandrel. My logic says all I need to do now is rotate the wheel and use some very coarse sandpaper and all of the paint will be removed from the strakes. How wrong I was. I engage back gear on the lathe to slow it down. I'm using some extremely coarse sandpaper. The backing of this sandpaper is just literally paper, so it's not very strong. Even though the sandpaper was very coarse and I kept moving it to a clean bit, it was very ineffective at removing the paint. Clearly this is not going to work. I need to use my special chisel. What's special about it? Well, as far as chisels go, it's quite safe. The end of it is ground flat. It's worth remembering that a right angle on any piece of metal becomes quite sharp. But it's not quite as dangerous as the normal tip of a chisel, which is sharpened. In this clip I'm using the point of the chisel, which is flattened, to remove the paint. You will notice that it's not digging in and marking the metal. I'm not using this chisel as a chisel, I'm using it as a scraper, and it's scraping the paint off very well indeed. Because I can hold the tip of the chisel in my hand, I can use the side of the chisel to scrape off the paint as well. Doing it like this was working okay. These strakes are held to the wheel rims using countersunk rivets, and it must have taken the builder a long time to create these wheels. Traction engine wheels really are riveting extravaganzas. Just look at the amount of them. Once I'd gone round every strake on the first wheel and successfully removed about 90% of the paint, I tried spinning the wheel and using some emery cloth. Surprisingly though, after the effort so far, the strakes didn't look very good. There's only one thing for it. I'm going to just do it manually. Using a piece of emery cloth should do the trick. The problem is every one of these strakes is riveted to the rims using countersunk rivets, which distorts them somewhat, and you can actually see the rivets, but this is okay. The original state of the strakes was caused by filing off the rivets to make them flat. By duplicating the process using emery cloth across the wheel, the strakes look a whole lot better. It's best not to get too carried away. Don't forget, this is just an old farm vehicle. It's not a specialised road locomotive, it's just an old tractor. Some viewers may be curious as to why there are holes around the edge of the wheel. This is to allow a road tyre to be fitted to the wheels. Rubber tyres were bonded onto a large hoop that fits the wheel, and the holes are used for bolts to hold the tyre ring in place. I'm quite happy with the way the strakes are looking at the moment, so I'm removing this wheel, and as soon as I've done that, I'm going to fit the other one. I transferred the piece of aluminium tube from one wheel to the other, and now I'm once again tightening the nut to hold this wheel in place on the mandrel. This job took a surprisingly long time to do. About 2.5 hours I think in total. And once again I'm showing my modified old chisel. Starting this second wheel was a bit depressing because I could see how many strakes I had to do, and I started counting them, which is never a good idea. This sequence is quite tedious and it's edited to make it shorter. The video footage is also running at twice normal speed. Slowly but surely I worked my way around the wheel, cleaning every strake individually. And in this clip you can really see how effective this old chisel is. Once I'd cleaned all the strakes, all that remained was just a bit of primer. I decided to spin the wheel in the lathe and use some 100 grit emery cloth. And once again this was completely ineffective. The only way to clean these strakes was to use the 100 grit emery cloth, but clean each individual strake from side to side. Suddenly I had a light bulb moment, a flash of inspiration. Why not use my small Orbital sander? This will make it easier to sand the strakes. And as you can see from this clip, it seemed to do the job, and I was very pleased. I even tried rotating the wheel. Did that work? No. The only problem with the Orbital sander is it puts small swirly patterns on the strakes, like Orbital sanders do. So once again, the only way to really finish this job is by hand. After doing this for quite a long time, I could let my mind wander. I wouldn't let my mind wander if the lathe was rotating, because I'd probably lose my fingers. Anyway, suffice to say that after quite a while, all of the strakes were cleaned to a good standard. I undid the nut and slid the wheel off the mandrel. And so I didn't lose any of the components, I put it back together. I originally designed this mandrel for holding cylinders, 1-inch diameter cylinders to be exact, like the one on a Stuart Victoria steam engine, and it works very well. When you tighten the nut on the shaft, the pressure causes the O-rings to grip the part internally. It's a very useful item to have in my toolbox. Here are the wheels on the workbench, and as you can see, they look quite good now. It's really pointless painting the outside of these strakes because immediately you use the traction engine, the paint gets chipped off. Back into the house now from the workshop, and I'm at the kitchen sink, which is full of warm water with a small amount of carbusonic liquid added. There isn't a warning on the bottle of this carbusonic liquid about handling it, so I'm really being careful. I'm not immersing my hands in the water. Even though the red paint and some of the lining on these wheels is damaged, I don't want to damage it any further by using a powerful solvent. After cleaning the wheels using this method, I ran them under the tap, again with some warm water coming out. Finally, I did have to put my hand in the liquid to pull the plug out. And as an extra bonus, here's a shot of the liquid draining away. Both of these wheels are now as good as they're going to get. The strakes are clean and the paintwork's clean, ready for touching in with some new paint. By this time, the cellulose thinners in the aerosol can cap had done the trick on the blowdown valve, and here you can see it in the plastic box, completely devoid of paint. It just needs a bit of a polish and refitting to the boiler. Finally, a health and safety notice. Whenever you use chemicals of any type, always wash your hands thoroughly after using them. Stay safe, stay healthy. Thanks for watching, and I hope you found it useful. Please take the time to visit my Mainsteam Models website and click on the section of the website that says Video Playlists. And by doing that, you can find other videos that you may like to watch. And by using the playlists, you can actually watch the videos back to back.